Welcome back to Ethereum Audible, to our third blockchain bite, where I kind of break down different terms and aspects of the blockchain world into small bite-sized chunks so that you can master those topics at the cocktail parties that you visit. Today, we're going to be revisiting really briefly why proof of stake. And I wanted to do this today because of all of the talk about the merge being delayed. And just as a reminder of why we care about proof of stake, what it is, why it matters. And before diving into why proof of stake, just a brief reminder of what proof of stake is, which is it's a consensus algorithm. That's all proof of stake is. It enables different nodes in a network to come to agreement on the state and the stage of the blockchain. So as a reminder, proof of work, which is Bitcoin, it works based on, well, work, which means that the miners who create the most computational power basically create the most blocks. And so by default, and this is part of the Bitcoin algorithm, the consensus algorithm, the longest blockchain is considered the valid one. It's got the most work put in behind it. In proof of stake, this is different because there is no longest blockchain consensus factor, because there isn't the same limiting factor of work that exists in proof of work in proof of stake. We don't care about work. And so anyone can kind of mint many blocks. In proof of work, the longest valid chain doesn't matter. In proof of stake, the consensus is reached by nodes, and they vote on the validity of blocks. So it's a more democratic kind of approach. And miners or validators or whatever you want to call them, they are assigned slots where they get to propose a block. And the rest of the miners validate that the block that was proposed is actually true. And blocks are assigned by the weight of the stake that you have in the network. So the more stake you have, the more blocks you get to propose on average. And if it's shown that you've misbehaved, your stake gets slashed. And by the way, most proof of stake chains are based on a paper called Tendermint from 2014. So if you kind of want to go back to the roots of Byzantine fault tolerant papers and research that led to most proof of stake blockchains today, that's a really good place to start. Now that we have proof of stake kind of firmly in mind, the question is, why do we care about proof of stake? Why is Ethereum making this huge shift in probably one of the most important aspects that a blockchain does, which is consensus? And Vitalik lays out 3 reasons in his post, Why Proof of Stake, which it was the first read through that we did on Ethereum Audible. So you can go listen to that entire post and the in-depth breakthrough. Basically, he lays out 3 reasons. The first is the cost of attack. The second is the recovery from the attack. And a third is decentralization. So the first, just in pure dollar for dollar terms, he says that the cost to attack a blockchain in proof of stake is higher than in proof of work. And that's because the capital to attack a proof of work blockchain is basically the cost to buy ASICs and GPUs, the cost to plug them into electricity and then run them. And that cost, he says, is lower than if you have a lot of assets securing your blockchain, as the proof of stake network in Ethereum will be, because there's going to be billions and billions of dollars securing Ethereum. And to get 2/3 or more to do a 50%, 51% attack, which is kind of the classic consensus attack, you're going to need to have billions of dollars locked up so that you can propose those blocks. And the same dollars basically would have bought you more ASICs and more electricity power, so you could have attacked proof of work. So that's reason number 1. The cost to attack a proof of stake chain is higher. The second one is recovery from attack, which is it's easier to recovery from a successful attack in proof of stake because it's all built around consensus and a social consensus. It's not built around the longest chain. Consider this: if you had an attack on Bitcoin by some nation state and they really bought up all the chips, the GPUs, the ASICs in the world, and they attacked Bitcoin, successfully, well, the Bitcoin network wouldn't really have anything to do because they're always going to be under attack by someone who has more hash power. And there's nothing you can do as long as the consensus algorithm is based on who has more hash power. And that's not the case in proof of stake, where you can just say, we don't consider their stake valid. We're going to fork. And it's much easier to do forks. It's much easier to control and defend against those kind of attacks. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's easier. The third one is decentralization, where I think this is one of the vectors where proof of stake folks get attacked the most from proof of work people. And that is that, in theory here, decentralization is increased by proof of stake because you don't need to buy a mining rig. You don't need to plug into electricity. You don't need to be a miner and compete with these large corporations who are now mining to participate in block rewards. You just need to stake your ETH, and that's it. And so, in theory, the more validators you have, the more decentralized the network is. That's the case for why proof of stake aids to decentralization. Now, the proof of work folks will say that's actually not the case because to stake successfully, you A, need a lot of capital, 32 ETH, 16 ETH. B, the rewards from staking goes to the stakers. And so the more you stake, the more rewards you get. And there's an effect of compounding. If you're staking 100 ETH, you're getting rewards from 100 ETH versus someone who's staking 1 ETH and is only getting rewards for 1 ETH. And in theory, that compounds and you can kind of increase your stake in the network. That's actually not so true the way the system is set up these days. But I still get that point. And the main reason is the larger players will be able to do more sophisticated attacks, quote unquote, like MEV attacks, where they restructure blocks to create kind of skim off the top and thereby get richer and increase their stake, thereby increasing their opportunity to do more MEV attacks and so on. And that's how you can get a capital concentration risk in proof of stake. That's the risk to centralization in proof of stake. Anyway, those are the three reasons. I don't want to get into it so in depth because this is a blockchain bite. But if you want to kind of hear the pushbacks to that, go listen to the first episode of Ethereum Audible on why proof of stake, the full read through from Vitalik, where he goes into all of those different calculations. And I also offer my pushback on why the proof of work folks are right and wrong at the same time. That's it for today's blockchain bike. See you next week.